Long, long ago, when the island of Taiwan was still a wild, emerald jewel draped in ancient mist, there lay a coastal plain hugged tightly by the towering, purple-shadowed mountains. There, hidden among the tall grasses and swaying lilies, were 7 small, perfectly round lakes. They were so clear, so impossibly blue, that the villagers called them the 7 eyes of the earth. By day, these pools acted as mirrors for the passing clouds. If you knelt at the water's edge, you'd smell the sweet, heavy perfume of wild lilies mixed with the sharp, bracing sting of the Pacific salt spray. You could feel the sun-warmed earth beneath your knees, but the moment you dipped a finger into the water, shiver a piercing, crystal chill would zip through your skin, cooling your very soul. Young Ahai, a fisherman with sun-darkened skin, loved this feeling most. He would kick off his straw sandals and let the cool mud squish between his toes, listening to the grass whisper shh as the wind danced through the valley. When the sun finally dipped below the horizon and the last seabird tucked its head under a wing, a different kind of life began. The air would grow so still, you could hear a single drop of dew go plip onto a leaf. Ahai would watch from the shadows as the Big Dipper, the 7 brightest stars in the heavens, began to glow with a restless intensity. Then, a sound like 1,000 silver bells chiming in a distant cloud would fill the air. Dingling, dingling. One by one, the stars would slide down invisible silken threads of light. They didn't fall with a thud, but landed as light as a swan's feather upon the surface of the 7 pools. The moment they touched the water, the dark ponds erupted into swirling galaxies of liquid silver. Ripples of phosphorescent light pulsed outward, turning the midnight meadows into a glowing dreamscape. Ahai sat on a moss-covered rock, his hands moving rhythmically as he mended his heavy, hemp fishing net. The rope was rough and calloused his fingers, making a dry scritch-scritch sound in the quiet night. He never tried to catch the star spirits. He was simply their silent guardian. "Do you get tired of hanging in the cold sky?" he would wonder silently. "Is that why you come down to bathe in our mountain water?" Sometimes, as the stars frolicked in the depths, they would release tiny, shimmering bubbles that popped at the surface with a soft, musical hum. To Ahai, it sounded like the stars were whispering secrets of the deep ocean, telling him where the warm currents were flowing or where the coral reefs were blooming with stone flowers. He felt a deep, hummed vibration in his chest, a sense of belonging. He whispered back to the glowing water, "Thank you for watching over us. Stay as long as you like." But one afternoon, the peace vanished. The air became thick and suffocating, like a sodden woolen blanket pressed against your face. Not a single leaf stirred. The insects, usually so noisy, went deathly silent. Even the birds fled toward the high peaks, their wings beating a frantic flap, flap, flap against the heavy sky. Ahai looked out at the Pacific. The ocean had turned from a friendly turquoise to a bruised, leaden gray. From the bottom of the deepest sea trench came a sound that wasn't a sound, but a vibration that rattled Ahai's teeth. Rumble. Rumble. It was the great sea dragon, awakened by the stirring of the earth's fiery belly. The 7 pools began to tremble, their surfaces shivering with thousands of tiny, frightened ripples. The air suddenly stank of sulfur and rotting kelp, the breath of a disaster. Something is coming, Ahai thought, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. Suddenly, the sky went black as ink. A roar erupted from the horizon, a sound so massive it felt like the world was tearing in half. A wall of water, 10 stories high, surged toward the shore. It wasn't blue anymore. It was a churning mass of black mud, jagged driftwood, and angry white foam. "Run! To the mountains! Run!" Ahai screamed, but his voice was swallowed by the howling gale. The wind whipped the rain into his face, each drop hitting like a needle prick. Sting, sting, sting. He scrambled toward the pools, his fingernails digging into the rough bark of an old tree as the ground shook beneath him. As he watched the terrifying shadow of the wave loom over the village, he felt a crushing sense of helplessness. His tears were lost in the freezing rain, and the taste of salt in his mouth was bitter with fear. Is this the end of everything we love? At the edge of the first pool, Ahai fell to his knees in the mud. He squeezed his eyes shut and poured every ounce of his soul into a single plea. Stars, if you can hear me, don't let the darkness take our home. Protect the earth. In that heartbeat, the ground didn't just shake, it hummed with a celestial power. A blinding, pure white light erupted from the center of the pool Ahai was clutching. One by one, the other 6 pools answered, shooting pillars of brilliant starlight high into the black clouds. The light wasn't cold. It was a radiant, holy warmth that smelled of ozone and fresh rain. It felt like a mother's hand placed over a racing heart. Ahai opened his eyes to see millions of tiny star specks dancing in the air, weaving themselves together into a shimmering shield of light to face the coming darkness. The 7 pools began to move. They stretched out long, glowing arms of water, reaching for one another across the plain. They were no longer separate lakes. They were a brotherhood of light. They joined hands, forming a massive, glowing crescent moon of starlight that stood between the sea and the land. When the black mountain of water slammed into this wall of light, there was no crash. Instead, a sound like 1,000 golden harps being plucked at once echoed through the valley. Zing, vroom, hum. The salt water and the starlight collided, shattering into millions of glowing pearls that rained down upon the earth. Ahai watched, mesmerized, as the angry, muddy wave was purified by the light, its violence turning into a gentle, sparkling mist. The air was suddenly filled with the scent of washed stone and new beginnings. The wind died down to a whisper. The rain stopped. As the seawater retreated, the green plain was gone, replaced by a wide, sweeping curve of a beach. Ahai stumbled toward the new shore, his legs heavy with exhaustion. The emerald grass was covered by a thick layer of smooth, blue-gray stones. He knelt and picked one up. To his amazement, the stone wasn't cold. It held a steady, pulsing warmth, as if it had a tiny heart beating inside. Each pebble was perfectly round, polished by the starfire, and etched with delicate white veins that looked like swirling nebulae or the tracks of falling stars. These stars had given up their place in the sky to stay here forever, guarding the land they had come to love. Ahai pressed the warm stone to his cheek, feeling the lingering heat of the miracle. The villagers returned to the shore, gasping at the new crescent bay. Ahai told them, "The pools are gone, but the stars remain. They are under our feet now." The pools? From that day on, the beach was called Qixingtan, the beach of the 7 star pools. And the people discovered something wonderful. Every time the tide washed over the shore and pulled back into the deep, the millions of pebbles would roll and tumble against each other. They made a rhythmic, melodic sound. Huala, huala, sh, lu, sh, lu. It wasn't just the sound of rocks. It was the stars singing, retelling the story of the night the light won. Ahai would sit with the village children on the warm pebbles, teaching them to close their eyes and listen. "Hear that?" he would whisper. "That's the stars telling you that you are safe." Today, if you travel to the edge of the Pacific in Hualien, you will find that same perfect crescent moon of a bay. There is no golden sand there, only those countless, sun-warmed stones, each one a silent guardian of the coast. Next time you visit, try to find a stone that fits perfectly in your palm. Feel its smoothness, its ancient cool weight, and look closely at the white star lines etched upon its face. If you stay until the deep of night, when the Big Dipper hangs high above the mountains, you will realize that the stars never truly left. They simply changed their shape, turning into the very ground we walk upon. And if the wind is right and the tide is high, listen closely, for in the rolling of the stones, you can still hear the echoes of that ancient star song, whispering through the salt air, forever and always.